welcome to episode 34 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and I'm here to talk to you about all things knitting and knitting adjacent, and probably a few things that aren't knitting adjacent. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons whose support helps keep this podcast up and running, and a special welcome to any new viewers who are checking out the podcast for the first time. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik, also known as Media Peruana, and I am a semi-retired knitting pattern designer, a knitting instructor, and all-around knitting enthusiast. I live in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. with my husband, who is a very tall man from Peru, and my two little boys, JJ, who is 8, and Ollie, who is 6. When I'm not knitting, you might find me doing yoga, watching baseball, baking, reading, vegetable gardening, but it's mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. All right, so I decided I'm gonna start taking just a minute at the beginning of each episode to tell you about anything I'm wearing, assuming I remember and I'm wearing something worth telling you about. So today I am wearing this shawl that was actually gifted to me by someone in a swap. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I will include a bit of text here to tell you about it. And then I'm also wearing my Breeze Racerback. This is a pattern by Jessie Mae Martinson. I worked mine with a fingering weight and a mohair held together, so it is extra fuzzy and soft. And if you happen to catch my Instagram stories this past weekend, you will perhaps remember that I talked about some new makeup I got. So just in case you're wondering, this is the Glossier Generation G lipstick in Cake and the Boy Brow. All right, how are we all faring this week and this month? We've made it into February, which is moving along relatively swiftly, I think. We have some snow today, just a little bit, maybe an inch of very wet snow fell. We did have a real snowstorm, a couple of snow days. Was it last week? No, the week before that. We got probably about 5 inches. Unfortunately, it was mixed in with some sleet and freezing rain, so it wasn't great to play in, but the kids and the dog still enjoyed it a bit. So we did get a chance to play in the snow. My kids are very different than I was, I guess. When we had snow when we were little, my mom would basically just throw us outside. We'd play for an hour until we were freezing, come in, all the woolens would go on the radiator to dry while we had lunch, and then we'd go back out and play again. My kids are not interested in playing on their own. They want a grown-up out there with them. And other than throwing snowballs, they are not very interested in building snowmen or anything like that. We don't have sleds for them. I probably should get sleds. It's just that it doesn't snow here anymore enough to make me really think it's worth it. But I think they would enjoy it, the few occasions that they get to use it. Back in my day, it did used to snow more in Maryland. I remember when I was very little, almost every year it snowed on my sister's birthday, which is January 10th. And one year in particular, I remember she thought she wasn't going to turn 3 because it had snowed and we had to cancel her party. This must have been, my mother must have actually had our birthday when we were little, our birthday parties on our birthdays, which seems a little odd to be having birthday parties in the middle of the week, but they were always family parties, so I guess maybe it worked for them. But I distinctly remember her thinking she wasn't going to turn 3 because it snowed and her birthday party was canceled. So yeah, when we were little, we had lots of snow. We still didn't have any sleds though. Anyway, so that's your very extended weather report from here in Central Maryland. Other than that, same old, same old. Obviously, we couldn't have a big birthday party for my sons. We just had my dad and sister over. And, you know, he got lots of toys, and I pulled out a bunch of kind of science-themed kits and things he has so he could have kind of a science birthday. And I put them all out, and I said, pick an activity, and I feel like he spent maybe 5 minutes on that before he was bored with it. We did pull out, a couple years back, my dad gave us an old microscope that I guess he had found at school or something that nobody was needing, and gave it to us for the kids. And up until now, they've really kind of been a little young for that, but we pulled that out, and it had some ancient slides in it. Most of the stuff in the slides had long since deteriorated, but I think we got to look at a chicken feather and an aphid under the microscope. They did enjoy that more. So I want to pretty soon order some. You can get some pre-prepared slides to look at various objects under your microscope. That is basically what we did for his birthday. We had some family and friends join us on Zoom to sing happy birthday. And other than that, it has just been working from home, virtual school, homeschooling my little one, never leaving the house. Yeah, that is about it. Same old here. I am really happy that my dad was able to get vaccinated. He got his first shot last week, and my sister has also had the first shot. She works in healthcare. My dad is a teacher, and he is also 73, so he is, at least in my mind, pretty high priority for getting the vaccine. And again, I know different counties are handling things differently. So he lives in Frederick County in Maryland, and they are not really, they don't really have all the vaccines that they want or need. So they've started, and they were supposed to be obviously more targeted. But now in the case of teachers, for example, they're doing it kind of randomly selecting teachers, which I feel like vaccine distribution probably across the country could be being handled better. And I hope that the new administration is going to be able to get a better handle on that. There's really no hope for me to be getting a vaccine anytime soon. I am relatively young and healthy, and I don't work in any essential industries or essential positions or anything like that. So I am sure it will be many, many months until I can get the vaccine, and the same for my husband. So we will continue to stay at home. Our local school system is starting phased reopening in March, but they sent out a parent survey asking, obviously, if and when schools reopen, what would your preference be? And so we had said that no, we would prefer to remain in virtual learning, just because we assumed that that perhaps the decision making would not be the most responsible, and that they would start reopening schools before community spread was under control. And that does seem to be the case. I am not going to be comfortable sending my kids to school until teachers have been by and large vaccinated, because community spread is still high, and I feel like you can either have schools open and the other sources of community spread closed, or vice versa. And we have restaurants open for some, I don't know what the percentage is, 50% capacity indoor dining and things like that. And it just is not as safe as I would like it to be for my kids to return to school. It's a hard decision for me, especially for the older one. He's very smart, and he is very bored with the virtual learning. Since he's on the spectrum, it is, for him, that means a difficulty kind of focusing on things a lot of the time. And sitting and staring at the computer all day is not easy for him. But I just don't want to run the risk. And my little one, I withdrew him from the school system in September so that I could homeschool him until schools reopened safely, and I had not planned on doing that regardless until the new school year starts. So I will just be continuing to homeschool him until the end of the school year regardless. And it looks like, unfortunately, unless something dramatic changes with the vaccine rollout, the older one is going to be staying home for the foreseeable future and continuing with the virtual education as well. I know you guys were super interested in my thoughts on vaccine distribution and the local school system. So thanks for joining me for that. Maybe we should start talking about some knitting. All right, I got some news and events here. Sometimes news is an event and sometimes events are news. So I'm just gonna kind of shift those two previously separate segments together and start addressing them as news and events together. Two things. One is that there is a new free tutorial up for you guys here on YouTube. This is a tutorial on the alternating cable cast on, and I'm going to try to include that little linky thing here, or maybe it's over here. My concept of right and left and mirroring is all off. So that's very true, actually, because pretty much every time I do a sweater pattern that has left and right sides, I end up with a note from my tech editor that's like, the numbers and the shaping are fine, but you've reversed what's left and what's right. Anyway, so I'm going to try to include that link somewhere up here, and you guys can check that out. The alternating cable cast on is for working in a 1x1 rib. It gives a really nice neat edge that I would say is similar to a tubular cast on, but is much less fussy. So this is my not progressing very rapidly descent pullover. Come on. And I use this 1x1, or this alternating cable cast on for this, and I really like it. You can see that, the light's kind of blowing it out. The knits and purls kind of blend right into the edge. Because when you're doing this cast on, you are alternating the way that you cast on the stitches so that one, has that knit shape and one has that kind of purl bump. So that helps the knit stitches kind of blend right down into the edge so that it's less of a harsh edge, and it looks a little bit like a store-bought garment where the edge looks almost kind of folded under. So I really like this for a top-down sweater, where rather than picking up the collar after, you start from the collar, and that's what you do with the descent pullover. You're not picking up your collar afterward, you're starting all the way from the top of the collar. And this looks really nice and neat, and it is not as nice and neat as the tubular cast on, but it's also much less fussy than the tubular cast on. So there's a new free tutorial on that technique, again, alternating cable cast on, right here for you on YouTube. That is news/event number 1. And news/event number 2 is that enrollment is now open for my signature e-course, Swatch Master. Swatch Master is all about swatching and gauge. And that's not to say it's all about how great and fun swatching is, but it is all about how to create swatches that are going to be a useful tool for you, and then how to actually use them as a tool to get great fitting garments. So all of the learning is swatch based in that we are making lots of swatches, sometimes mini swatches, so that we can compare different aspects, look at different fibers and colors and things like that. So there is quite a bit of swatching involved, but swatching is not the end goal. Swatching is the tool to get us to the end goal, which is great fitting garments. So enrollment is now open. The actual e-course is going to be starting on March 1st. It is 4 weeks. And it includes over 4 hours of instructional videos. You get a workbook that we're going to work through together. You get access to an exclusive Facebook group for current and former Swatch Master students, so you can talk with your fellow students and the people who've already graduated. There is a weekly live kind of Q&A session with me, which is also done through the Facebook group. Although that's how we've done it in the past. I'm going to open it up to some other ideas if people want to try Zoom this time, since I think we're all now experts in Zoom. And it is going to be 4 weeks of learning what gauge is, how it works, how to make sure your swatch is giving you an accurate gauge, and then using all that information to get your sweaters and other garments, but let's face it, the biggest deal is sweaters, to get everything to fit correctly. So we start off from the very basics, from, how do I make a swatch? And we go all the way into, swatching in different fibers, swatching for color, swatching for designing, how to adjust your gauge, how to adjust a pattern for a different gauge. Anything swatch and gauge related is going to be in this e-course. This is, I believe, the 4th time that I am running it. And my former students always have nice things to say. So you can check out maybeaberuana.com/swatchmaster for more information. And you can even see some of the comments that previous students have made. You can get kind of a look at the syllabus, some frequently asked questions, all of that is right there. And that is also where you can enroll. So regular enrollment for the 4-week course is $40. But for this first week that enrollment is open, you get extra 15% off. So that's about $34. So I hope you will check that out. This is really a course about setting a great foundation for your knits. So whether you are a new knitter or an experienced knitter, if you've ever had any trouble with swatching and gauge, this is a course for you. I hope you will join us in class on March 1st. On and off the needles. In this episode, I don't have anything new off the needles, of course. I do have a couple of things on the needles to talk to you about. The first is what I keep looking down on here in my hands. This is my outline tank. This is a test knit for Jessie Mae Martinson. And as you can see, I haven't made a ton of progress yet. I do need to get moving. And it doesn't look like much yet because all the fun stuff for this particular one happens at the end. There are going to be sort of a trim around the armholes and the neckline of open stitches that are created by dropping stitches. So it's a really cute pattern, at least in my opinion. But there's just not a whole lot going on at this point because all of that fun stuff is at the end, and the body is, as you can see, otherwise knit in stockinette. So for this, I am using a new to me yarn. Let's see if I can pull it out of the bag without making a mess of it. All right, success. This is Shibui Knits Twig. So this is a really interesting blend of linen, recycled silk, and just a hint of wool. I think it's like 10%. I thought this would be a really good pick for a tank top design. Well, I like my breeze racer back. It's not my most practical knit because there are very few occasions where you want to be wearing a tank top, but you want your tank top to be made of wool. If you're warm enough to wear a tank top, you don't want wool. And if you're cold enough to wear wool, you want sleeves. It makes a nice layering piece though. But for this one, I wanted something that was going to be a little bit more flexible. So with only 10% wool, this is not going to be a warm knit by any means. And you can see, I think, that the different fibers take the dye differently. So it looks a little bit salt and pepper, kind of. You got some little pops in there of lighter blue and darker blue. Now in the actual piece, it all blends pretty well together, but you definitely can see that it does not look like a super solid blue. It has hints of lighter blues and darker blues. My primary concern with this yarn is that because it has wool, you cannot machine wash it. But usually when you're working with linen, one of the keys to getting it to soften up is to machine wash it. So it is a little rough on the hands to work with, and I don't know ultimately what it's going to be like to wear. Now, according to the care label, it will soften up with hand washing as well. My swatch maybe softened up a little bit. I don't know if I would really say that, but I guess we'll see. Regardless, it should be a nice blend of fibers for wearing when the weather gets warm, even if it's not super fun to knit with, because like I said, it's a little rough on the hands. So this test knit is actually needs to be finished soon. Don't start getting tangled. And this is 3 skeins wound together because I have a heavy duty ball winder, and so for small amounts of yarn, it actually doesn't work that well. And then also for like a linen, you can see it doesn't, like when you pull a cake of wool off the ball winder, it kind of cinches up inward. This doesn't really do that, which kind of leads it to collapse as well. So I wound all 3 skeins together. That's why it's rather a large cake. So this test knit has to be finished up soon. So I'm going to assume that she is planning to publish this pattern in the spring, but I don't know any more than that at this point. You can take a look at some of the other test knitters. I was really surprised. I had said before I wanted to do more test knitting this year because I'm not designing anymore. And so I saw her call for testers, and she's so popular. So I applied, but I didn't really expect much of it. And then she had followed up on that to say, there were 600 people applied to test knit. So then I really was like, all right, well, that's, it's probably not going to work out, but it did. And I am testing, but there are plenty of other testers as well. So if you check out the hashtag #OutlineTank on Instagram, you can see some of those. And then of course you can see her original sample over on her Instagram page. She is at, I'm not gonna guess, but I am gonna put it down here so that you can go ahead and find her over on Instagram. So that is the first thing that has popped onto my needles. And then the other thing is not new on the needles, but it's relatively new, but I think I've shown it to you before. But I have made a fair bit of progress, and that is my Ursina. So this is part of my Make 9 for 2021, and it is going along beautifully. I am really happy with the yarn. This is Knit Picks City Tweed Aran, which, as you might guess, is an Aran weight yarn. and it has a bit of alpaca in it, so it's really soft. I've used this before. I know that it gets pretty pilly, but I think it's worth it. It's a real joy to wear. So I actually have reached the point where I'm going to separate the sleeves from the body of the sweater. That's going to be the next round. So you can see it has this V-neck in the front, and then it has these detailing along the raglan lines, and that is being repeated. This is not very long here, so it is being repeated down the front, and it is also repeating down the center spine. And then if you're not familiar with this pattern, that one column is going to kind of divide into a gradually widening triangle toward the bottom of the sweater. This is a cropped sweater, and presumably you could knit it longer if you wanted to. That is not my plan. I think this is going to be really cute to go over jumpsuits. And I have a few of those in my closet. I have one in particular I think this is going to look really cute with, and sort of help make that jumpsuit more seasonless, because it's still relatively a thin. I mean, I got it like Target or some big fashion house like that, so it is not super high quality, great fabric or anything. It's a very thin, I'm sure, synthetic fabric. It has a little cotton in it, so I still am not going to be able to wear it when it's super cold, but it does have short sleeves, and I've in the past worn a different sweater of mine, the lace hem tee over it, and that looks really cute, but that's also a thin layer. That's a fingering weight sweater, so this is again an Aran weight, so that's going to be extra warm, and I think it's going to pair well with that. So I am making good progress, of course, with an Aran weight yarn. This is knitting up pretty quickly. As I said, I am ready to split the sleeves and body. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I might actually have that done by the end of February. Wouldn't that be nice? Of course, I am still working on my Finish Fix Frog, a 2021 journey project, which is to finish all of the whips in my numerous whip baskets. I believe I counted at 16. And you can find more information about that by checking out my Finish Fix Frog vlog series. And again, I'm going to do that link on one side or the other here, so that you can check those videos out if you are interested in that. And that is about it. I'm supposed to be knitting socks. I told you guys about my kind of secret sock project, where every 2 months I pick a bag that I have filled with yarn and a sock pattern, but I don't know what's in what bag, and I'm supposed to knit those socks. So of course I picked in January, and I haven't even started. And I really need new socks. A lot of mine are wearing thin. The dog has ruined at least one pair. The dog also ruined a hat this week. The dog has nothing but chew toys in this house, and she's looking for my stuff, I swear, because she also chewed up my slippers, which she had stopped chewing shoes, so I had felt kind of comfortable leaving them out, but no. Anyway, so I have not even started those socks, even though I really do need new socks. I did cast on my second non-Euclidean sock, which is part of my Finish Fix Frog, but I've only knit a few rows, so it's really not worth showing you. Yeah, and that is about it for on and off the needles in this episode. Adelante, where I tell you about upcoming patterns, a segment that should be retired at this point, but still is not. I am still plugging away at my final sweater pattern. You watched a previous episode. You may recall that I had finished this sweater and the color work section was too small and I had to rip it all out and start again. So I'm still doing that. I am only making myself do 2 rounds a day because one of the reasons that my color work was so tight last time is because I was kind of trying to rush and push and get it done. And also because if I try to do any more than that, I'm just going to end up hating the sweater and giving up entirely because I hate knitting things twice. So if I have to do it, I have to be kind to myself or it's not going to get done. So I am just a little bit more than halfway through the 43 round chart. It's going along fine. You can see the color work is not pulling in anymore like it was the last time, and then it's going to open up even more when I block it. And there's really just not much more to say than that. I've already showed this off so many times, and here I am showing it again because no, it is still not done. But I'm getting there. By the time the next episode, so episode 35 comes, this will be done and the pattern will be released or I'm gonna lose my mind. So that's really all I have for Adelante because as I said, I am more or less retired from pattern design. I do have one more pattern that is gonna come out with a third-party publisher. It is February, so sometime this month or maybe it's next month. Other than that, I have no more plans for patterns. I am continuing to update some older patterns with larger sizes, so when I have something to share about that, I certainly will, and I do. Just this past week, I re-released the Vaughn vest pattern. Let me go ahead and pop a photo in here. This has been updated to include sizes up to 5X. This is a surprisingly popular pattern, at least for me. And I figured as I'm updating older patterns, I probably want to at least start with the ones that are the most popular. So even though this is, gosh, it's almost 6 years old now, this continues to be a popular pattern. I guess we have a secret sweater vest lovers among us. So now it does include sizes up to 5X, and of course it is available on Ravelry and on PayHip, and links to both of those can be found in the box down below. Other than that, I'm not working on any patterns, but I am working on an essay. So some of the most of the kind of knitting magazines will also have, short stories and essays and articles and things. And I recently got a submission call for one of those that said that they were interested in some essays. So I am working to prepare a submission for an essay about kind of giving up my pattern design business and rediscovering knitting as a hobby. So the submissions I don't think are due until the beginning of March, and I don't know how that's going to pan out. I used to write a lot, for a little bit in kind of late high school and early college. I was considering kind of a journalism career. I worked on the newspaper in both high school and college. So I really enjoy writing quite a bit, but it's just one of those things that has kind of faded away as I've gotten older and busier with jobs and kids and things. But it is something I do enjoy. It's something I hope to get back into a little bit more, and we'll see what comes of this submission. You may or may not see this essay in an upcoming magazine. If not, just put it on the blog. We'll see. But that is all I have to tell you for Adelante. Not much is coming because I'm supposed to be retired. Thank you all so much for joining me for episode 34 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. Links to everything that I talked about can be found in the show notes at mediaperuana.com/Hilo and Stitch. Thank you again to my Patreon patrons. who help support this podcast and all of the tutorials and challenges and knit-alongs and things that I'm able to offer. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and other content here on the YouTube channel and getting some special perks and bonuses and early access to new videos and things like that, you can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. As you are watching this episode here on YouTube, I hope that you will like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff that helps expand the reach of the podcast and the channel itself to new knitters. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time.